Elites and the three-generation degradation model. This video too will deal with the rise and the fall of the elites. First by taking a closer look at the faith of the Vandals, and then by a brief introduction to Mosca. Mosca is particularly interesting because Gaetano argues that a ruling elite always need a certain social mobility, flexibility, in order to function, so that it can recruit the best of the broad people. My analysis of Sweden and the whole of the West, according to the Mosca's perspective, is that this is no longer the case here. Our ruling elite have cemented their positions, largely inherited, and made them dependent on party affiliation, and consistently refuses all forms of social mobility and flexibility. As a result, we've gotten the growing distance between rulers and the ruled, and the rulers' quality, both mentally and morally, which is declining rapidly. Controlled by rotten anti-racist ideologies, the rulers try to recruit as many minorities as possible to their ranks, while the deeper stratas of the ethnic Swedes has become completely uninteresting and often almost embarrassing for them. I think my first encounter with this cyclical view on elites was the Byzantine historian Procopius' account of the rise and fall of the Vandals. It is more or less three-generational model that seems to be true in many cases. First, there is the original generation. It is filled with a will to power, and at the same time grounded in the virtues and traditional worldview of the tribe. In the case with the Vandals, this was King Gaiseric. In 406, the Vandals advanced from Pannonia by way of Gaul, which they devastated terribly, into Spain, where they settled in 411. From 427, their king was Gaiseric, who in 429 landed in North Africa with about 80,000 of his followers. Peace was made between the Romans and Vandals in 435, but it was broken by Genseric in 439, who made Carthage his capital after he had thoroughly plundered it. During the next 35 years, with a large fleet, he ravaged the coasts of the Eastern and Western empires. In 455, he plundered Rome itself during 2 whole weeks. Say what you will about Gaiseric, but he wasn't a coward. The first generation seizes power through virtu and personal characteristics gained in battle or struggle. Then comes the second generation. This one is born into privilege, but still has some of the martial and personal virtues of the first. The second generation usually is able to keep the spoils, but rarely expand them very much. And then comes the third generation, that is born into luxury, spoiled and weak. Neither the virtues nor the will to power is left. This generation loses power, and the cycle begins anew. This model can be applied rather well on Swedish social democracy, ideologists, bureaucrats, corrupted and mentally bankrupt, on the USSR, and on many self-made millionaires. The Italian scholar Gaetano Mosca had the following to say on the rise and fall of elites and nations. These two causes seem almost inevitably to go together. Nations die when the ruling classes are incapable of reorganizing in such a way as to meet the needs of changing times by drawing from the lower and deeper strata of society new elements that serve to give them new blood and new life. Then again, as we have already seen, nations are also marked for death when they suffer a dwindling of those moral forces which hold them together and make it possible for a considerable mass of individual efforts to be concentrated, disciplined, and directed toward purposes related to the collective interest. In a word, old age, the forerunner of death, comes upon political organisms when the ideas and sentiments which make them capable of the collective effort that is required, if they are to maintain their group personality, lose influence and prestige without being replaced by others. I would say that the current ruling class is doing its utmost to recruit new members from minorities, but is doing very little to draw from the deeper strata of their own kinfolk, and they are definitely causing a decline of the moral forces that hold society together. It is not a recipe for success.